Lovely. Let's start then, everybody. Welcome to this meeting of the Transport Committee of West Yorkshire. It is a committee made up of all parts of our glorious county, all coming together to discuss the transport priorities and make progress. So my name is Susan Hinchcliffe. I'm leader of Bradford, but also chair of this committee. And this is the final meeting of this civic year, actually, prior to the Combined Authority AGM on the 20th of June. So for some colleagues here, it could be their last meeting here before they move on to other committees, depending on what their host authorities have decided. So before we start, I will just go around the table because we have a few new people. My name is Susan Hinchcliffe. I'm leader of Bradford. I've said that. Who are you?
Thank you. Adam Hunt, Committee Support.
Councillor Peter Carlill, Councillor in Leeds, but I'm here as Deputy Chair of the Transport Committee.
Councillor in Kirklees, and I'm also Deputy Chair of this committee.
Scott Patient, Deputy Leader of Calderdale Council, and this will be my last meeting, unfortunately, but I'm sure Sarah, my colleague, will gracefully walk in my shoes going forward. Also, apologies for Councillor Colin Hutchinson, who's recovering from surgery as well.
Councillor Abdul Hanan for Leeds, Headingley and Hyde Park.
Councillor Jonathan Pry, I'm Deputy Leader of Leeds and the new portfolio holder for Economy, Transport and Sustainable Development.
Councillor Andrew Lloyd, Bradford Council.
Councillor Neil Buckley, Alwoodley Ward, Leeds City Council.
Martin Bolt, Murfield Ward, Kirklees Council.
Councillor Marn Khan, Wakefield Council.
Councillor Jacob Williamson, Wakefield Council.
Good morning everyone, Councillor Annie Maloney in Leeds and Transport Engagement Lead.
Good morning everyone, Councillor Oliver Edwards, Leeds City Council, and also my final meeting.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Matthew McLaughlin from Colne Valley Ward in Kirklees and Transport Engagement Lead for Kirklees.
Mick Bunting, Interim Director of Transport Operations, Combined Authority.
Good morning, Helen Ellerton, Head of Transport Policy at the Combined Authority.
Good morning, I'm Dave Haskins, I'm the Interim Director of Passenger Experience and Assets at the Combined Authority.
And I'm Simon Warburton, I'm Executive Director for Transport at the Combined Authority.
Thank you very much, everybody. Congratulations to Councillor Patience on his elevation to Deputy Leader, and of course to Councillor Jonathan Pryor for. Apparently, you are a full voting member as today because you're a portfolio holder, so that means you can vote. So just to clarify that matter. So apologies for absence. Is that recorded?
Yeah, apologies for absence from Matthew Morley, Councillor Colin Hutchinson, and Councillor Moses Crook.
Thank you very much. Can we just note that the microphone for Councillor Rushshaw and Councillor Firth is not working very well? So
it's been
okay.
Councillor Steele as well, obviously I mentioned on the...
Councillor Steele, as an apology, thank you. So, declaration of disclosable pecuniary interest. Anybody has anything to disclose? No. Thank you. Exempt information. There is a confidential item in the electric vehicle infrastructure strategy, which is in Appendix 1 of Agenda Item 11. Can I just ask anybody who wants to refer to that? So obviously, when we come to the item, I'll remind you again, but we'll have to clear the room if you want to talk about anything or ask any questions about that appendix. So just bear that in mind when we get to that item, but I'll repeat that. Minutes of the meeting of the Transport Committee held on 13th of March. Any questions, comments on that? Councillor Williams.
Cheers, Chair. I just, under item 17 of the minutes, I just wondered if we'd received any of the passenger data we'd requested at this previous meeting from Northern Rail to do with the overcrowding issues we've been having.
Is that Dave?
We've been in discussion with Northern Rail around this. They are in the process of still working on getting that information for us, but they're assuring us there are no problems. That is yet to be tested through the evidence.
Right, thank you. Do you reckon we might be able to get them to bring it to this committee when they come? Or have it at least sent to us by in time for that committee?
They're due to come to the next committee. We'll ensure that if that information isn't available by then, they'll be able to explain why it isn't available, but hopefully it will be available by then. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Any other matters arise? Councillor Edwards.
Thank you. Also, a quick follow-up. Point 15, correspondence with Northern and TPE in regards to trade union relations. Have we received any response? And if not, can we chase that up, please?
I've not yet seen a response to that. I will chase it up again. We're having regular discussions both with Northern and TPE on a monthly basis, so I'll make sure it's picked up there. Yeah.
And of course, at future meetings, I'm afraid you won't be there, will you, actually, Councillor Edwards? But we do often have the operators here, which will be a question that we need to make sure we keep asking them. So it's very important for the effective running of the railways. So, any further ado on that? No? Otherwise, are we happy to accept those as correct minutes of that meeting? Please show. Thank you very much. That is carried. So moving then on to the first substantive item on the agenda, which is passenger experience rail. Dave, did you want to start that item?
Okay, thank you very much. There's a report here. It's got an appendix which has got quite a lot of technical and detailed information beyond, but I'll try and give a high-level overview of the report so that members are aware of what's going on out in the network at the moment. As it says in 1.2, it covers a range of areas from trends, service changes, reliability. It touched on the strike issue and passenger network enhancements. In terms of passenger trends, the figures, if we compare the figures to last year, we're seeing upward trends of Northern about 4% increase from last year. We're seeing TransPennine about 6% up on March figures, and LNER up 21%. So LNER is the biggest increase there. And at Leeds Station overall, figures are back to about 80% of pre-pandemic levels. As we previously reported, a lot of increases that we're seeing are actually around the leisure market. There's still slow but steady increase in commuter markets over time. In terms of rail service network service changes, I won't go through all of these because that could get into quite some level of detail. But the next national main change is on the 2nd of June. Some relatively minor changes in our area, although minor though they may be, they still impact on passengers either positively or negatively. The lead we just mentioned on crowding complaints. The Leeds, Doncaster and Bradford North West Electrics is one of those where shorter trains have been introduced, and we're still awaiting the evidence on that. There have been some small timetable adjustments in the Calder Valley and Leeds to Skipton Carlisle routes, including additional stops to plug gaps in services such as Marden Royd, Lowmore, Sarby Bridge, Gilster Forge and Appley Bridge. Also in June, there'll be an impact on the Penistone line due to some of the what they're called 150 class trains having to be taken out for heavy maintenance. So they'll be reduced for a period of time from 3 to 2 cars. We're keeping a close eye again on potential overcrowding issues. As we said already, that's something we do need to make sure we're well on top of. In terms of TransPennine Express, the Manchester, Huddersfield, Wakefield, York train, which is currently four times a day service, is that going to be increased to 6? So there's some good news there as well. There's quite a lengthy explanation around with LNER increasing number of journeys to London and how that impacts upon wider services relating to withdrawal of the fast services at Wakefield for their services. So I think a common theme there is as services are being changed in sometimes minor ways, they do have knock-on impacts on our local rail network, which we need to be very, very closely aligned to. And we do, as I said already, have regular contact with the rail operators to keep on top of that. There's still challenges through the Rail North partnerships where we could not get support for reinstatement of the services between Bradford and Ilkley Skipton to 2 trains an hour. They were reduced at what was a temporary measure. We're still protesting and asking for service to be reinstated from the end of the year, and that's being followed through. Moving down forward to the rail network performance and reliability issues. The good news here is there have been some improvements in punctuality and cancellations, significant in some cases with Northern and TPE. The most recent 4-week period for Northern is at Northern's at 83.5% and TPE at 76%. And cancellations are down as well quite significantly. Northern are down to 3%, or actually a bit lower in the eastern region. And TransPennine quite a drop down to 2.35 from what was a 6.72% level of cancellations. A strong reason behind that is around the fact that the stabilisation of the services, albeit at a reduced level, has led to increased levels of reliability. So passengers have a greater level of certainty now that their trains are going to turn up. And that's also been reflected, as I said above, in patronage levels as well. And my understanding is it's been reflected in levels of passenger satisfaction on TP, which have risen from where they have previously been before. There are still some challenges, it's fair to say. There's some TP are coping well with the crowding levels, but Northern do still have some challenges around train crew availability, which is impacting on the services. Been issues around sick leave, but both companies reliably inform me that they're well on top of the training of drivers and staff, which historically has been an issue on the rail network. Moving on in terms of sort of network rail related issues, the rainfall of last year has caused problems, 20% more than average, and we've seen that manifest itself in terms of the high profile cases, particularly around the landslide at Baildon, which has resulted in the full closure of that Shipley to Guiseley line, which is still closed, I believe, to the end of June at this stage, is the latest position I've seen. I understand the Pontefract Nottingley situation has been resolved now, and that's open again, or about to be open. I can't recall exactly which. Network Rail are putting increasing money through a national fund of 2.8 billion around climate resilience and extreme weather, and I think it's particularly important that we've got a number of lines in our area with some in some cuttings and with embankments, which I think are quite significant strategically for us. We need to make sure we continue to push Network Rail about getting what we need out of that prioritisation. Moving on again a bit more, we dealt last year, if you recall, with the consultation around potential closure of rail ticket offices. TransPennine have told us that recruitment's now complete, but there is still a bit more training of staff to do. Northern, it's not quite as rosy a picture. There's still some areas unfilled, and recruitment and training is still ongoing, but both continue to make good progress in those areas. We're aware of the rail strikes, which is flagged in 226, 227. I won't go over that, although that has had some impact on rail passengers and patronage over the period. In terms of passenger network enhancements, there's a lot going on. Councillor Firth is involved in the TransPennine route upgrade working group meetings with members, and we're working very, very closely with the rail industry. I've been impressed with the level of information that we've been getting and the forward forewarnings and the contingency planning that's been going into place within the rail industry. That's not to say that there may still be some glitches along the way, which we do pick up as they occur, such as when rail replacement buses don't quite meet our needs. But the report sets out what closures have taken place and potential future closures coming forward. I think that there's some really big stuff in here, and I think it is really important that we continue to put this information out to make the passengers aware of what's coming up. And the rail industry are very good at keeping us informed when those timescales change as well, because people need to be more forewarned as we go forward. Some good news set out, I'm nearly finished here, some good news in 231 about the new train maintenance depot at Shipley, which has been announced, forming part of TransPennine route upgrade, with 100 new skilled jobs and apprentices, as well as the aim of having 80% of workforce coming from areas along the TRU route. So there's some, it's a mixed bag. I think I'd say overall a lot more positive messages coming out from the rail industry than we probably experienced if we look back a year ago. But as always, there's always work to do there. So happy to take questions.
Thank you. So there's a lot in there. Obviously, I join you in celebration about the Shipley depot, which we're very pleased about. It was great to welcome the Rail Minister to announce that a few weeks ago. I just want to concentrate, though, also on the landslip issues, and I know Wakefield have a similar problematic area there. And I think obviously it's been very disruptive for our residents over the last few months, and has taken an inordinately long time to sort out, obviously because it affects people's lives, people's houses. But I think it has, for me, opened up a new vista in terms of, climate emergency, the fact that, land is getting more and more waterlogged with all the rain we're having, and this is an increasing problem across the north and perhaps across the country. He said that they're putting a study to the side, but I think it's something we need to raise on Rail North as well, actually, on the agenda, because I think it is a major issue that structurally they need to be on top of. Councillor Williamson, I think you also wanted to mention something on that.
Yeah, I think from our point of view, there was a lot of issues around the communication. So whether that's to Wakefield Council, elected members, and to residents as well, there seemed to be quite a significant period, where like everybody didn't really know what were going off with the landslip issue, and there seemed to be a few complications with sort of replacement bus services and stuff. We are quite pleased with the outcome of the replacement bus services, but there was a lot of issues getting to that point as well. So I don't know if, like, going forward, if there's anything we can do to improve, the transfer of information, basically, from whether that's from operators, from Network Rail here, and then to everyone else, basically, going forward. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's a very valid point. I was out there at Castleford Way heading out to Pontefract, and it wasn't clear, this was a few weeks ago now, where the replacement buses were coming from. I flagged that immediately with Northern at the time, and that was rectified within a matter of a day or two. So I think if we see these issues, we need to flag them quickly. We can escalate them very, very quickly, and I'm confident that Northern and other rail operators will react quickly in these circumstances. They don't want to be caught out in the same way as we don't want passengers to be caught out here.
Thank you, Councillor Firth.
About the rail replacement buses. I've raised it with Helen. There seemed to be a problem with students at Greenhead getting back to Dewsbury. For some reason they don't want to stop or whatever. And that's been brought to my attention by a number of parents, and I'm hopeful that can be addressed. But we all know that the TIU upgrade is the biggest, I think just about the biggest civil engineering project in the country just now, and they're doing quite a remarkable job. And I'd just like to point out, even though it's not in my ward, it's just over the hill in Kirklees, Morley Station, that's a fantastic example of engineering. They've done a marvellous job, and if that's replicated along the rest of the line throughout Kirklees, we can only applaud them. But we'll keep an eye on them, but it's really fantastic. One more point. We touched on landslip, and climate change obviously has got a great deal to do with that. I just had to smile because earlier on in the papers, they've got a team, where is it, about the extreme heat team, are ready to spring into action when if we do get any sun and a summer, spring into action to address any problems with high temperatures.
Indeed, I'm afraid it is going to be a problem in the future. I took to an engineering company earlier in the week. They're trying to prepare for all eventualities. Extreme weather conditions are something that is going to impact all our lives, isn't it? And therefore, we do need to prepare for that, because otherwise it's going to be hugely disruptive to our travelling public and to the economy as a subsequent.
So they are prepared, which is great.
Yeah, well, we're not prepared enough to stop landslips happening at the moment, so that does need sorting. Councillor Patient.
Thank you, Chair. And yeah, on Councillor Firth's point, it sort of springs up a visual image, doesn't it, of rail people sort of spraying hose pipes on the railway tracks or something like that. But actually, from a serious point of view, Calder Valley, as we know, floods a lot, and we've found, especially with storms sort of Keir and Desmond, situations where we've got kids in school and they've not been able to get home properly because the rail network's been affected so much. I think it's really welcome what they're saying here, but it feels like there needs to be a bit more of a concerted effort to connect with partners that are asking, especially Environment Agency, who are delivering flood alleviation schemes in places and want some of that connectivity to happen while they're doing some of that development work. I guess the other thing, just to say briefly as well, is just around some of the improvements on stops. We're still not quite there to where some of the cuts were put in 2018, sort of 19 time, and it'd be good to see some of that happen within the lifetime of, well, sadly not me sitting on the committee, but perhaps in Councillor Courtney's tenure.
Under your leadership, I think probably is what the phrase you're searching for. Councillor Cowan.
Chair, can I add my frustrations regarding the cross-country survey that's going to, the changes that are coming in? Do we know why there were no consultation with combined authority with regards to this, and at any point is it likely to be reviewed? The decision, is it likely to be reviewed in the future?
Decision on the
cross-country
cross-country changes. We have been closely working with the rail industry around this as much as we can. We recognise that when these things happen, they have consequences, and there ultimately end up being some trade-offs. In some cases, we believe we can live with the trade-offs. In some cases, we're quite unhappy with the trade-offs. This is the one where it's been quite challenging to get to the point where we're at. We are consulted with it, and if there's a need to do a bit more communication with local members around this at times that maybe has not happened, we can start doing a bit more around that. So if we come up with further situations like this.
And Councillor Williamson probably wants to come back on the same issue.
Yeah, just a couple of issues I want to touch on. So with the cross-country, just carrying on from that, it's, we've had issues with the carriage reductions on like northern services, and if we're losing a significant number of these cross-country services in both directions every day. I think it's about 11 stops, you know, across both directions that are completely going. And it's just going to put a significant pressure on the rest of us rail network, as I know as the Combined Authority has already pointed out. But my worry is, when you look at the wider transport picture, with as buses we've been hit hard on, we've got serious issues with reliability and punctuality, and all this like sort of towns and villages within the district are becoming isolated from one another, and then our district's then becoming more and more isolated from other districts in West Yorkshire, and we can't go on. And it's just, I think train operators need to be looking at the entire rail network holistically, so we can't just have this situation where each and individual rail operator is just going to start cutting the services, because we're just going to be pushing issues from one operator onto another operator, onto other services, and this can only be profit driven. They're looking after their own profits, and I think as passengers over decades have been paying over the odds in terms of rail fares, and I think it's about time they need to start giving back to us passengers and the taxpayer as well, and actually start providing some decent services rather than cut.
So, Chair, I think Councillor Williamson makes a very good point, and just as the discussion's taking place, I wonder whether it's worth us just raising these issues with Transport for the North and Rail North. So the focus of Transport for the North and Rail North inevitably tends to be around Northern Rail services and Transpennine services. But I think the point you're making, Councillor Williamson, is effectively cross-country acts as a local service through parts of Wakefield, and that perhaps gets a little bit overlooked at the moment. So we'll take that away and pick up with TFN what is their model of engagement with cross-country.
I think part of the issue is that when the railway industry looks at trains, they think about them as going A to B and passenger numbers, speed, connectivity. They don't see the wider cohesion issues, the wider economic issues, regeneration that we all rely on transport for. And I think that's I'm constantly trying to broaden the horizons of the rail industry to make sure they realise that these decisions are made, like the one to reduce the services between Ilkley and Bradford. it's hugely damaging for our economy, and they need to see the wider ramifications of that. Sorry, Councillor Buckley, I think I may have missed you earlier. Apologies. And Councillor Bolt.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I wanted to bring up something which is not specifically on the paper here. White Rose Station. And the contractor has disappeared, the developer has left the site, and it's effectively abandoned. And I just wondered what the timescale was in terms of getting this started and completed.
I mean, it's not on the paper, so I'm not sure.
I'm happy just to briefly update, because clearly members will be aware from media coverage. So White Rose Station is one of the programme of new stations that's being delivered around West Yorkshire. The Combined Authority is the principal funder of that station development, but not actually the project manager of the scheme. The scheme is being project managed by Munro Kay, the owner of significant development around White Rose. There have been a series of cost overruns within the scheme. We're currently working through with Network Rail and some independent advisors a full understanding of the attribution of those costs, so that we can understand with the other partners, City Council, Munro Kay themselves and Network Rail, how we go about coming back together as a set of partners to address the cost overruns. While that process takes place, there has been a temporary pause in activity. I'm hoping that through the next 4 to 6 weeks, we should be able to reach a point of conclusion with the partners that means I can bring some fresh advice back to the Combined Authority in terms of whether there are what the budget implications are and how we reinstigate activity. So it is a temporary pause. It will be delivered, but we clearly need to make sure that we've undertaken due diligence so that we're securing suitable value for money for the Combined Authority's significant funding contribution into the scheme.
Thank you, Councillor Bolt. Yeah, I mean, obviously, can you keep it brief, Councillor Booker? It's just really a lot to get on, and it's not actually on the paper, so I don't really want to go into any detail on it, if you don't mind, because we have got a lot to get on this agenda. So very briefly.
Okay. So are we saying that Munro Kay could still be the contractors, even though they've walked away?
So just to clarify, Munro Kay are the project managers. There's a company called Spencer Rail that was contracted to. I don't think it's appropriate for me to go into what's a commercial arrangement between those two parties, but we're working very closely with all of the parties.
Councillor Bolt.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. A question: when we talked about the local benefit of some rail companies, the detail of data that we've got from TP and Northern is to be commended, but for other state and such as Grand Central, it's just go look on the website. Why don't we have that data produced? Because Grand Central is also a local provider for people to get through 4 of the districts in West Yorkshire. It links Kirklees and others through to Wakefield and Doncaster. So we don't get the graphs and everything. You know, told to go look on the website, and there are issues with reliability on that service. The other one, and Eric's mentioned Morley Station. Could I ask if the Combined Authority and its partners are doing anything to improve pedestrian and cycle access from Morley Railway Station to Morley Town Centre? The principal route is up the steps to the Miners' Arms, which are actually owned by Leeds City Council, I believe, which most of the time are quite precarious because they're covered in algae and everything, and you wouldn't want to be taking a lot of luggage. You wouldn't want to be trying to carry a bike up and down there or anything. It's almost like Sir Edmund Hillary country trying to go up and down those steps, as I find when I'm going to work. So is anything being done for connectivity from Morley Station to Morley Town Centre?
I'll pick the 2 points there. Firstly, on the Grand Central data, I'll take that away with the rail team to establish if there's a reason why we don't get the data, if they don't collect the data, or it's just that we have not requested to that level of detail yet, but it certainly can. I'm mindful it becomes a very long appendix, but equally I'm mindful that if there's an appetite for some of that information that's important for you at local level, then we should be trying to get our hands on it. I don't know the specific answer on your Morley question. I know there's been challenges. It's been looked at over the years about how we can do better connectivity from the town centre to the station. I know I'm not quite up to speed. The funding that came through from Morley through was at the Towns Fund, did have some aspects around there which were due to be around connectivity, linking the station in better. I know it was looking at car parking as well at one point. I'll take that away and see where we're up to with that. But yeah, there are challenges in that area, as you say quite rightly, Councillor Bolt.
Councillor Loy.
Thank you, Chair. It was just going back to the Baildon landslip. I just wondered how confident we were that the end of June was going to be achieved to reopen it, and whether there's been any more information received since the report was prepared.
So they've told me it is going to be finished by the end of June. Last night we had a workshop with local residents on how to improve the replacement services. So and Northern Rail Network ran on that. We're on that as well. So as you know, obviously as a local councillor there, it has been very disruptive, and I do think there needs to be a more strategic look at how we resolve that before it starts in the end, because obviously now trying to petition for more services between Ilkley and Bradford is made harder when it's been closed for the last 3 months, and that is a very hard negotiation position to be in. But I will keep pushing for that with your support, Councillor Loy, to make sure we get as many services as possible between the two town cities. Very important. But yes, at the moment, that's what we're being told, and they've not indicated that's going to be any different. So, yeah, we all look forward to that reopening. Had Councillor Firth and then Councillor Williamson.
Just to mention through you, Chair, to Councillor Bull, there must have been a hard day lot at Morley because the platform was full of people getting on the train this morning.
Cheers, Chair. I'll be very quick. The carriage reductions on the 150s, I know it says it'll affect mostly the Penistone line, but I wondered, we have them on the Leeds to Sheffield line, which goes through Morthorpe and stuff, so I just wondered if that were going to be affected. And on the Trans-Pennine Express service from Manchester to York, I mean, I welcome the increased services on that line. I've spoken to quite a few people who are happy with the service, but there seems to be an issue with overpricing on the tickets from Wakefield to York, and I think it's a route coding error. I think what I'm being told is it needs sort of changing to not via Doncaster or Leeds, because I think it's resulting in like a 50% increase on tickets. So I just wondered if maybe the authority could take that up with TPE, please.
Okay, on both those, in terms of the Class 150s, I've not been alerted to the fact that there are issues there about them being affected, but we are working closely with Northern. I'll chase that up again once again to make sure, and I'll relay it back to you, Councillor Williamson. On the TPE overpricing issue, I'll absolutely definitely pick that up straight after the meeting. If you want to drop me a couple of details around that, you've said the thrust of it. I don't know if there's any more that sits behind it, but I'm happy to pick up directly.
Lovely. I think that is all the questions. All right. Okay. All right. I didn't know who you were. Sorry. Speak. So he's going to pick the matter up after the meeting. Thank you, Councillor Bolt, for spotting him there, hiding in the crowd there. Thank you very much. Lovely. Okay, well, if there's no further questions then, we have the report for noting, and we'll move on to the next item, which is the equivalent paper, Passenger Experience Bus. Obviously, in this paper as well, we're just going to have verbal updates on the Bradford bus interchange, because obviously, we're talking about passenger experiences bus in Bradford city centre at the moment, and obviously affecting the wider district. The passenger experience is not as good as it should be because of the closure of the bus interchange, and that is something that is really hindering people getting around. And we are due to have a paper at the Combined Authority on the 20th of June. However, I know obviously we've just been announced that it's a general election, which means that's going to curb papers coming. But can we therefore bring that paper forward so we're not in the pre-election period? Because obviously I'm very keen to make sure progress is made on that to expedite and improve matters as quickly as possible. Dave, do you want to just come back on that?
I think in terms of what you just said there, Councillor Schiff, absolutely yes. We're working on a paper at the moment we'll be bringing forward as soon as possible, which sets out the situation and around Bradford Interchange and where it looks like we'll be going next. But in terms of the Bradford Interchange bus station, which remains closed, work is ongoing on the surveys to assess the safety of the structure at the appropriate level of detail. I remind everyone here that this is a large and very complex concrete structure that we're dealing with here that is over 50 years old. So this is not something that can be done very, very quickly, but as quickly as we possibly can. At the same time, we are working hand in glove with Bradford Council and trustees of the City of Culture team to ensure that there is a befitting sense of arrival for the city for 2025. So that's parallel to the work we're looking at in the interchange. We're making sure we're working closely on that issue. So that's the headlines in terms of the bus interchange itself. If I could pass on to my colleague Mick Bunting, who'll give us a brief overview of the bus operations in the city centre at the same time, and then we could pick up on some wider issues. Perhaps.
Yeah, and can you just reassure us of some senior oversight on this project, because obviously this is major disruption to people in Bradford. I want to make sure that there's proper governance arrangements around it and proper senior oversight.
Yeah, absolutely, Chair. Thank you. Just to go into the mitigations to the challenges that have been highlighted there. We've deployed staff at various parts in the city throughout the period since January and various junctures throughout service changes. We've ensured that passenger information is kept up to date on all our online facilities, and also we've got staff working around the city to ensure that on-street information is up to date and correct at all shelters. We're maintaining close relationships with Bradford Council on the shelter rollout, on the TCF rollout, and we've got, I'm told this morning, 13 of the 17 are now installed. The main development there being Vicar Lane, which is now in the final stages of implementation, which allowed us to split services out from Vicar Lane onto Leeds Road, which has had a massive improvement on congestion this week from the changes that took place last weekend. We're getting I'm getting regular reports from our research and intelligence team in terms of bus performance in the city, to ensure that we are keeping a track of that, and also how it compares to West Yorkshire. And I'll go over some very brief highlights on that in a second. And we continue to work very closely with this Safer Travel Partnership in terms of deploying PCSOs, working with our neighbourhood policing teams and ensuring that people are reassured and feel as safe as they can do in this difficult time as services are pushed out to the periphery of the city whilst these important works take place. So that all as my personal oversight. I also have a project team that's managed by my head of mobility service, which meets on a weekly basis with partners including Bradford Council. And that looks at a number of work streams, including accessibility and health and safety and other issues that passengers are raising with us frequently, either on street or through our communication channels, which we're working through to ensure that those appropriate mitigations are put in place. But that project team is headed up by the head of mobility service, and she reports into me on that. What I can say is that since January, punctuality in Bradford has actually improved from 77% to 82%, and lateness has decreased from 19% to 13% of services, and a year-on-year comparison equals that from 77% last April 2023 to 82%, as I've just said, this year. And the number of cancelled journeys is down at 1.6%. Patronage is something that we are keeping a close eye on. On a year-on-year comparison in April 2024, it was the same as April 2023. However, West Yorkshire wide saw a slight increase of around 6%. So we are keeping an eye on that, and mitigations are being put in place. The latest of which, as I've said, are the service splits that took place last weekend to reduce congestion at bus stops and shelters and stop locations, and to reduce those clusters of buses at specific sites in the city. I've got people on the ground that are monitoring that on a daily basis, and I'm told that that has had a significant impact. And we are keeping a close eye on that patronage figure to ensure that we can bring it back in line with West Yorkshire and exceed it as these mitigations and improvements are put in place. Thank you.
Thank you, and obviously it's absolute priority for us for the situation to improve as quickly as possible. And the fact that the bus interchange is closed was nothing that we predicted would happen. Therefore, it has been something that's impacted on our Transforming Cities programme. People in Bradford are not shy at coming forward. So they tell me I don't need a research and intelligence team to tell me what's happening. They will tell me quite rightly when they're displeased about things, and I can tell you they are very displeased at the moment about how things are happening at the moment. Councillor Ross-Shaw?
Yeah, thank you, and thanks for the update. It's really useful to know, and it's good to hear some of those figures around punctuality and reliability and kind of where they are. Obviously, when people have to adjust to a new route, it can kind of feel worse, and it sometimes is, notwithstanding the fact that there's always a bedding in period and improvements we can make on that. Just on the accessibility element, I know that's a big concern for people, and it's really good there's that kind of weekly meeting. I just wonder if there's something we can do about kind of these issues have been raised vis-a-vis improvements we've made off the back of the communication, because at the moment what's happening is people will raise an issue with me, I'll pass it through to our team so they can pass through to you, but there's not, I couldn't say much back of this is how we've kind of improved things and tweaked things as it's gone in. So we know obviously the more shelters that we can get in, the better it'll be, but obviously if you've got people on the ground who are making those improvements, the residents who've had that issue will just move on, but to communicate that to a wider audience to show that we've made those improvements and we've listened, I think will help provide some reassurance to residents. It might just be worth us thinking about how we can get a bit of communication out on that.
Bit of you said we did kind of thing.
Yes. Yeah, thank you, Councillor. I think that's a really important point. And on that, very briefly, our accessibility coordinator is part of the project team that I mentioned, and also on our daily stand-up calls. We've got an accessibility actions log, which information is fed into that from a monthly walk around that our colleagues do with Bradford colleagues. And we've got a list of issues, risks and mitigations and solutions, so we can put that out as a communication as to what has been done, and that log's updated on a daily basis. That work is a really key element for us. The inclusivity of travel is really important to us, and that's why we've dedicated this key resource to it in partnership with the council.
Councillor Firth?
Yeah, I just want to repeat the same question that I asked in the last meeting around staffing for Bradford Council. Has Wyker now hired enough people so that wardens, etc., and community and neighbourhood officers from the council are not having to step in and support, and they can get on with the day jobs?
Yeah, so all of the staff that are being deployed on the ground at the moment, as far as I'm aware, are either our own staff, operator colleagues, or agency staff that we get in through our contract with our agency colleagues who are there. So as far as I'm aware, I will check that out. But yeah, I did raise that with the officer that manages the operational response to this, and that's what I've been assured of. So yeah, thank you.
Lovely, thank you very much. So, Dave, just look forward to a paper expedited before the pre-election period starts.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Moving on to other elements of bus in that paper, is anything else?
Okay, this is a briefer paper than the rail paper, so it won't take us long to go through the detail of this one, but I'll draw out a couple of the key points that are in the paper. In the same way as we just talked about rail passenger trends, bus passenger trends, as Mick just said, are upwards. Weekday bus use is 86% of baseline, which is up on last year. And it's a similar position at weekend data. We're at 87% of, well, I say baseline, I mean pre-pandemic, which is the measure we've been taking to for now. In terms of network performance and reliability, the tables that are set out in 2.6 demonstrate, if we compare back to 2019, a drop in reliability of around just over 3%, a drop in punctuality overall of about 4%. These are the March figures I'm picking up, and stops along the way of 2%. which is not great. But if we compare the 23 figure to 24, there's actually, I'd call it a stabilisation or even a slight improvement in reliability and punctuality over the last year. So there's some good news there when we aggregate across all the operators. Some good news, sorry, but this is aggregated across all the operators, and it doesn't necessarily reflect there'll be some local pockets where there have been issues. This is across all of West Yorkshire, to remind you. In terms of service changes, there's in February 24, tranche 1 of the bus service improvement programme services were introduced across the region, and from about a week or so ago, in May, we're just investing further in the new Bradford orbital route through BSIP, which incorporates the current Route 629. We also have proposals where we're working closely with the operators to deliver additional tranche, what we call 1.5 schemes in the next month or two. So that's coming forward. The other area just to flag is in terms of passenger satisfaction and attitudes. There's some links provided in the papers to some work that we've contributed to around Your Bus Journey, which has been managed by Transport Focused, and the results from 2023 are published there. And there's also an annual survey we run around looking to understand West Yorkshire residents' perceptions and attitudes around transport and infrastructure. A link to last year's results are published. We have got this year's results through, which are being reviewed at the moment. And the intention will be to provide an overview or even presentation with the operators present at the next meeting of the Transport Committee, where we'll run through those. So hopefully that will be quite informative for people to be able to get the deeper insights into what's going out there in the street and what the passenger perceptions are. I think it's fair to say that some of these surveys took place, as I said, between January and March. So we may pick up some areas where there's drop-offs in satisfaction as a result of issues such as wet weather or other issues that have been going on across the region. That's everything from me on that report. Happy to take questions.
Thank you. And I can see Councillor Edwards. Quick off the blocks there. Councillor Edwards.
Thank you, and a pithy contribution as well. I think, and I appreciate this is not in your gift necessarily, but I think as a general bit of feedback, it would be quite helpful with these tables in 2.6 if we could know some of these figures by individual routes. So I recognise that some of that's with the bus operators themselves, but I think that would make it even easier for all of us in our roles scrutinising these figures to know what the actual picture is and how it's affecting our residents.
Okay, I'll pick up on that point. Well, I won't pick up on that point directly, but we will pick up on that point. And I think when we get to the passenger charter report that Mick Bunting is going to be introducing in a few minutes, he'll probably touch on some of those issues around key performance indicators and information and what we need to do around that.
Councillor Firth.
Sorry, Chair, I'll be brief. But I can't, it would be remiss of me not to mention the Ariba, the 202 service, which I told you about the wife jumping on it, and so I get in the neck when this happens in Dewsbury from my lass, because she catches the bus a lot. And only this Sunday, the bus turned up as usual, and believe it or not, on time. His usual bus station. She got on, as did 30 other people. The bus driver went to have a break and then didn't come back. And then somebody rocked her up and said, "You'll have to get off the bus with no driver. You'll have to catch the next one." So you've got 30 very disgruntled passengers there. And there's one more here. I turned up for the 747 202 from Leeds to Dewsbury, only on Friday because I met a friend there for a couple of hours. Didn't turn up, just bus cancelled. So that meant there was a bus every 2 hours rather than one every hour. And it's not on. And Arriva continually doing this with a 202 and 203 service. Sorry, but I have to do.
Whilst we're at it, Councillor Williamson, did you want to come in on that?
Yeah, cheers, Chair. I'll just pick up from what Councillor Edwards said. I mean, is there any way of getting an idea how sort of reliability and punctuality sit in terms of each district as well? Because we just, on a West Yorkshire level, we're saying like punctuality and reliability seems to be stabilising. And I appreciate you mentioned obviously there'll be pockets and stuff, but it seems like in Wakefield district, there's none of this sort of news about this service or that service is improving or getting better. We have frequent sort of issues where we're talking core bus routes don't have a service, particularly on an evening for a couple of hours. There's no bus whatsoever running, and it would seem to have a lot of issues, particularly in some of us more deprived communities as well, which raises issues in itself. But I would really be interested to see how different operators in different districts are sort of performing against one another, because I think as we go forward with franchising, we need to get a real grasp of these issues and see sort of where we need to be, you know, putting in the work and stuff to improve us services when we actually take over them and regulate them ourselves. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that, Councillor. To come back on both of those points, I think really valid points, and thank you for them. We are working really closely with Arriva. We understand they've got significant, as is not new news, they've got significant issues with recruiting and retaining drivers. We are working really closely with Arriva through the West Yorkshire Bus Alliance at how we can support them to meet this challenge, including looking at the possibility of some agency workers to get in and get those routes moving. And we invested heavily through the BSIP in a number of Wakefield services, as you know, and I think they're perhaps the services that you're talking about, the challenges we're seeing, and others. And we are aware of those challenges, and we are working directly with the operator to try and mitigate them, but understand the frustration that's causing passengers.
Very briefly, Councillor.
Cheers, Chair. There is some issues on some of the BSIP funded routes, but some of the routes we're talking about is things like the 110, which is like a commercial service and probably the district sort of main core route, where on an evening and well, to be honest, various points through the day we've just got services just not running at all. It's supposed to be a 15-minute service, and reports I keep getting from residents are there might be a couple on a run which just start turning up at all, and it's, you know, it's a busy route.
I think those points are noted. You want to act on that? Absolutely. Okay. In terms of, and I think when we move forward on franchising, I think we do have further insight, don't we, into which routes are doing well, which aren't. Yeah. Whether those can be shared or not in public domain is a different issue, but that's the kind of intelligence we do need to be able to move forward properly, as Councillor Williamson says. Yeah. Okay. Fine. Anything else on that? Are we... Lovely, thank you very much. So we're noting the passenger experience and the actions arising from that. Moving on now then to item number 7, Bus Service Improvement Plan, BSIP update. Also, for colleagues, I'd prefer, if we can, to put in here item 12D about the BSIP Clear and Simple Fares, Mayor's Fares, and put the approval for that in this paper as we're going to be discussing that in here, item 7. So, Helen is going to speak on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hinchcliffe. Okay, I'll introduce this paper and then we'll jump onto the existing programme and the approval, and then I'll come back to the next phase of the BSIP programme, if that's okay. So, because the purpose of this paper is to really update and get kind of approval or delegated approval to submit the next bus service improvement plan. The deadline for submission is the 12th of June. Obviously now we have a general election, so I am just checking with DFT that they are still intending taking submissions on that date, or whether they're delaying it to post the election. We were required before the general election was announced to publish our bus service improvement plan by the end of June, but again, now we have a general election, that does change. The paper does start with kind of a programme update on our existing bus service improvement plan. We've touched on the update and kind of the summary of the work on the network side in the bus passenger experience paper. So if I just hand to Dave to go on to the Mayor's Fares bit, if that's okay, and to do the approval for the further Mayor's Fares funding. The approval for the additional network funding will be done later in the meeting with the project approvals.
Okay, thanks very much, Helen. In the report that Helen's just introduced, sections 2.7 through to 2.10 set out an overview of the Mayor's Fares programme within BSIP. and where that stands at the moment. As members will be aware, this is the implementation of subsidised flat fare bus fare across West Yorkshire to address concerns of cost of living concerns and encourage bus travel uptake post-pandemic. We've seen an update, as has been previously reported, with 25% of people surveyed reporting using buses more than previously, and 70% of people agreeing that it makes bus travel easier to use. In introducing mayor's fares, nationally, government introduced what's known as National £2 fare cap scheme, which is a slightly different scheme to what we've got here. It's not quite as wide-ranging, but it still has the basics of the mayor's fares in there around capping single fares to £2. So in the rest of England, that was introduced in January 2023, and government have been committed to maintaining that scheme until the end of 2024. The fact that the national fare scheme has been maintained creates issues in terms of additional financial pressures against that £34 million BSIP allocation against mayor's fares. So we're not in a position, as per the original assumptions that were made within the programme, that we were going to be increasing the fares by a certain level of inflation year on year. We've not been in a position to do that since government has held the national scheme at £2, which has been absolutely fantastic for customers, but gives us some issues in terms of the longevity of the Mayor's Fares programme itself. We're working very closely with DfT at the moment to ensure we continue to deliver benefits for passengers from this scheme, and that we're not out of kilter with the rest of the country around the national £2 fare scheme. That's absolutely critical for us, particularly going to franchising, that we don't get into that situation. So we are working closely with DfT as we speak, trying to work through solutions to the problems of the affordability on long-term scale of Mayor's Fares and how that sits with the national £2 scheme. As was mentioned by Councillor Hinchcliffe there earlier, sitting alongside the overview of Mayor's Fares within BSIP, we are also seeking an approval which is to basically unlock the rest of the Mayor's Fares money that sits within BSIP. So of the £33 million, we're looking to unlock the final sum. I haven't got a figure right in front of me here. Final sum of 10.352 million at this point in time. It's worth mentioning, and this is where we jump to page 116 at the bottom of your page is page 116 of the pack. I'm not sure what page it is on your screen, but it says 116 on mine. It provides an overview of the funding envelope around Mayor's Fares in the context of BSIP. It talks about it being with an additional 11 million, which has come from the further phase of BSIP funding. That takes us to 45 million, just shy of 45 million. But this report specifically is looking to unlock that an extra 11 million, extra 10.35 million. Work has been undertaken around this to ensure that this still represents value for money. We've heard already how passengers are really. But in terms of how we assess the value for money in economic terms, it's giving us a benefit cost ratio of about 1.78 to 1, which is a good, healthy benefit cost ratio, and certainly the benefits from that are coming through. So what we're seeking the committee to do here is seek the funding recommendation to unlock that money in this committee.
Thank you very much. Any questions, comments on that? First of all, can we, before we take any further questions, can we just take a vote on, if there's no questions on it, about the extension of the Mayor's Fares? Are we happy to propose that? Can I suggest allocate that? I propose that, seconded by Councillor Carlill. All those in favour, please show. That is carried. Thank you very much. Any questions around the further reports there that we have on BSIP?
Do you want me to go? I'll go through the rest of them.
All right, fine. Thank you. If you can do that, that's fine. Thank you. I was going to go on to Keithley, but that's fine.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Hinchcliffe. So in terms of the kind of the BSIP requirements going forward, the DfT, so the DfT BSIP requirements in 2024 further kind of this next round of the BSIP requires us to update our bus service improvement plan to accept the next level of funding. So this is the 13.3 million for this financial year from Network North. As part of that, we need to update our baseline of kind of date for change in terms of our patronage and what we've delivered to date, and we need to undertake a bus connectivity assessment and understand, work with the bus operators to kind of understand their capacity and capability to deliver going forward. So those are new elements that we need to work through, which we will be submitting alongside our new bus service improvement plan. So our new BSIP will build on what our submission from 2021 and take into account the decision we made on bus reform back in March. The programme within there will kind of continue to deliver the elements we have been delivering, with an additional element which will also look at kind of our infrastructure and propose to kind of have capital improvements around our bus stations. What we're asking for today on this is delegated approval to submit our BSIP in theory on the 12th of June, unless DFT advise otherwise due to the general election.
Lovely. Any questions around that? No, Councillor Loy.
Thank you, Chair. It was just a question about the access bus fleet, the replacement of them. I was contacted by, it was one of our colleagues in Baildon was contacted by a resident about the sort of the new vehicles that they were using, because I understand some of them have reached the end of their life, so they've had to lease some vehicles in the meantime, and apparently there have been some issues with the various things, the no handrails, nowhere to put, or sort of insufficient space to put wheelchairs and shopping, uncomfortable and poor design for older people. So I was just wondering if there was any sort of plans to find more suitable vehicles in the interim before their full replacement.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you for that, Councillor. The access bus, as you know, provides a really valuable service to communities. Since the pandemic, we've been trying to procure new fleet into that service, but due to real challenges in the market in acquiring those vehicles, that's provided fruitless up to date. But we have got a pipeline in progress, and that is something that we are working through now to look at the fleet and renew it. So it is in train.
Lovely. Any further questions? No. So are we happy? Obviously, I was pleased to see about the Keighley results as well. Actually, Councillor Firth, just looking in here, the increase in patronage in Keighley, just a £1 flat fare, which is nice to see. So it just shows what can be achieved. So we have local control of our own destiny. So that's great. So we have a suggestion from officers that we need to submit this bus service improvement plan to come by the 13th, did you say? 12th of June, obviously subject to general election, which is putting everything out of joint of it at the moment. I'm happy to propose that. Councillor Carla, happy to second it. All those in favour, please show. Lovely, that is carried. Thank you very much. I think that concludes the items on this paper. Moving on then to the passenger charter update, something that Councillor Edwards was particularly keen in at the last meeting, and obviously as his last meeting with us today should be his last hurrah, really, the passenger charter. So I'll let Mick present on that, and I'll go straight to Councillor Edwards.
Thank you, Chair. So members will hopefully be remember the launch of the passenger charter in March 2023, with the promise that there would be a renewed charter on an annual basis that would pick up on performance, KPIs, feedback from passengers, performance in the network, to ensure that the document was a live and meaningful document and just didn't sit in the background, not adding value. So we've been teams have been working really hard to do this. So the purpose of this report is to update on what the annual review of the first year of the charter has told us, and to evaluate our newly developed key performance indicators, which were which were put in place partway through the first year of the charter's life. Just a really quick bit of background. The passenger charter is a key requirement of the bus service improvement plan to set the standards for customers of what they can expect from our bus services in terms of punctuality, reliability, driver standards, standards of bus, customer complaints, and all those really important things that passengers rightly value. It also seeks to get a consistent set of standards across the network and with all operators, and that was a key feature of the Mayor's Big Bus Chat consultation, where passengers were really clear on this. And the Charter set out a number of ambitions, which I won't go through. These have been talked through before, but they are in the report. I'll take that as read. But we were really keen this year at the annual the first anniversary of the Charter to look at the KPIs, look at the data behind them, and see exactly what it's telling us. Again, I don't propose to go through every single KPI in the report. In terms of all the data there, but and they're there for all to read. But I will take any questions. But some of the really key elements and some of the hot topics that we've got from passengers throughout the year, particularly around the customer complaints process, the responsiveness of operators, and the way that process is set up in terms of an ambition for it to be more centralised and localised in terms of responses, rather than perhaps going to further afield call centres to manage, which we've found has not been to the satisfaction of many customers. And also in relation to customers who are expressing dissatisfaction, and the promise in the Charter with regards to free travel vouchers, and you'll see at KPI number 4 that over 2,500 of those were given out, and Councillor Edwards and I have had a conversation about this. I'm sure Councillor Edwards may want to make some comments about that as well. We in terms of the timeliness we know is an absolute key element to passengers. We're mindful of the results of the Transport Focus survey and what passengers told us in that. And how important that is to them, and we've got that as a key performance indicator in the Charter as well. There are other bits in there that I'm sure you've had a look through. I think out of that, what the point that I'd like to make is that from this, now that we've had a year of the Charter, we've got all the data, we've got the information, we kind of know what it's telling us and how passengers feel through assessing the KPIs and through looking at surveys and what the Transport Focus information has told us. We are now going to be establishing a quarterly report that goes into our Transport Board that will report on all these KPIs. So we've got very senior oversight in the organisation on this performance, so that any key actions that come out of that will feed into the West Yorkshire Bus Alliance, where we can directly hold operators to account for any findings that come from that quarterly reporting. You'll see at 2.6 that a key concern of passengers is around failure to operate, and those we've talked about ghost buses before, services that have been cancelled, and you can see in figure 1 that's really a keen focus for passengers in terms of what they expect and rightly expect from our operators and bus journeys. And the monitoring of this data will now give my teams the tools that they need for us to have meaningful conversations with operators to hold them to account on that. We've also got clear data around passenger safety and how passengers feel with regards to their own personal welfare in light of antisocial behaviour and crime, and the difference that we see between male and female passengers, and also the difference between day and night. During the daytime, a lot of passengers feel pretty safe, but you can see there's a huge reduction during the nighttime hours, and a big distinction there between men and women, and that's a real key consideration of ours in terms of our safer travel partnership work and what we can do in terms of targeted interventions and intelligence-led interventions to deal with that information. So they're the actions that we're taking. That quarterly report will come back into the Transport Board from this point on, and we will continue to update Transport Committee with key updates and also on an annual basis refresh the charter. So this report also seeks approval to implement the 2024-25 passenger charter, which is appended onto the report. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you for that, and it's good to have a first year. I'm also quite keen, even if we want to look at adjusting this, to keep KPIs constant over the years, because then you really see whether you're making improvement or not. So I don't want to adjust too much about what we've got here, although we might want to add to it. Councillor Edwards.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your work as well on this, Mick, and your team as well. I know there's a lot of work that's been going on behind the scenes, so that's really appreciated, I think, by all of us. I mean, looking through the points, there's a lot of helpful things that you've said. I think, I think one of the things that we discussed was around free travel vouchers, and I think from the bus operators, this needs to be a bit more ambitious. There are a whole load of people for whom getting a free travel voucher would not mean a huge amount, and in a lot of places where there is no alternative to the bus, people are often having to take taxis. And I'm not talking about travelling to the other side of the city, but for example, if people are having to get to work and there isn't a reasonable alternative, it's true in my area, it's true in many areas across West Yorkshire. So where people need to take a reasonable alternative and they can demonstrate that in terms of cancellations, I think that some kind of compensation scheme, reasonable compensation scheme, would be something to work towards. And I appreciate there are that's an ongoing conversation, but that is something that I would very much like us to push. I think improvements in the complaints procedure as well, which you've touched upon, because at the moment for a lot of passengers they feel that if they make a complaint, the bus operators get to mark their own homework, and that can't be right. And about the quarterly reports, I think that's very promising and that's very helpful. I know there are residents and members of the public who would also welcome the opportunity to be able to access that as they're able to with the train companies, and so moving forwards I think that would be something worth considering. But thank you for your work, and please keep up the good work.
Thank you. Just before I come back to Mick, I want to go to Councillor Buckley, Councillor Williamson and then Councillor McLaughlin.
Thank you, Chair. Page 56, 2.6, and as was highlighted in the report, this is, there's nothing worse, is there, than standing at a bus stop and it's going to be 15 minutes, 8 minutes, and then suddenly it disappears. It's just demoralising. And the number of people who tell me about these things, and I've had it myself, but it says here, this highlights that for a variety of reasons, many bus journeys are still not being properly tracked in real time. And I think when you try to explain to people the reasons for it, they glaze over. They just can't understand it, can they? So, it's here, 14% of journeys are not happening. And I just wonder if we need to tighten this up, don't we? And how can that be done?
Okay, I'll just go to other questions first before answering those. You just take a note of all these. Councillor Williamson. Oh, Councillor McLaughlin then.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just something I thought, again, it's echoing everything Councillor Edwards said. This is a fantastic bit of work and it's a real improvement for the people of West Yorkshire, because getting that customer-facing part of the service right is absolutely important, because customers are very rightly quite annoyed a lot of the time and it's not always easy for them to express that frustration and for us to analyse it properly. So it's brilliant. Just something, given that we've just passed the updated BSIP, which now includes safe, accessible and welcoming stations and stops as part of our strategy, there isn't really a KPI in the passenger charter that relates entirely to that. There's a KPI about safety, and there's one about timetables, but not about accessibility or how satisfied the customer is with the overall experience. And I just thought it might help the two parts of our sort of overarching view to become more cohesive with each other if there was one added which would include that, or to expand one of these to include that, so that the two strategies sort of marry up together properly.
Lovely. Councillor Firth and Councillor Page.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mick, for your report. You said you had evidence of lots of vouchers, but have you evidence of the number of people that actually had to hire a taxi in your report? Because, you know, when it's in the report, you're 20 minutes, if you don't turn up, you can actually hire a taxi and charge it back. And I'm just wondering how many people are taking advantage of that.
Councillor Patient.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. Just wanted to dwell on one of the KPIs there, and we've touched on it before, which is the first one around the percentage of homes within 400 metres. Now, Councillor Bolt before mentioned the Hillary Step. You know, we're not averse to that within Calderdale. We've got a lot of those going on. So just really a bit of a plea to allow that to evolve and take into account those locations where that 400 metre line of sight doesn't quite step in with what the landscape looks like.
So we've got a list of questions there, Councillor Mick Bunting, if we'd like to come back on that.
Thank you for all your comments and questions. So yeah, in terms of just going back to Councillor Edwards' points, in terms of the compensation scheme, this is something that we've got a task and finish group now. I've asked staff to engage directly with operators on this, including the point you made about the customer feedback and complaints process as well. I know there's a lot of dissatisfaction around these key elements. We did, when we set the charter up in 2023, try to tackle that when we first launched it, and there are some challenges around it, but understand the importance. And I see in my mailbag you know, the comments that passengers are making about this key element. What I do also want to do is track the number of complaints, but the satisfaction of how complaints have been handled. I think that's a key element to this, and that's something that I've asked colleagues to look into to see if that's feasible and possible, and how we can develop that important piece of work. So yeah, and the compensation scheme is something that we will work through and talk with operators. There are some challenges around that, obviously, from a financial point of view, but absolutely engendering customer confidence in our buses means that when things go wrong, there is a proper recourse for customers, and that's an important element of this. Now, this document will help this to pull through. To Councillor Buckley's point on the ghost buses, which always crops up, doesn't it? It's a really important issue. We've got a task and finish group set up with operators around this. This is, in terms of the 14% number that I think you talked about in terms of buses that are not being tracked, there are a couple of elements that I think are contributing to that. One is a process issue in terms of data being put into the system by operators to show that buses are actually not setting off for whatever reason that might be. And we talked about challenges around drivers earlier on, and also a tech issue in some of the areas where GPS is not properly picking up these signals. So both of those elements are being looked at in the task and finish group. It's a really important area. There's nothing more frustrating, as you say, to have that information that you think is reliable and then your bus doesn't turn up and the bus disappears off the screen. It's a key priority of this task and finish group to work with operators to tackle those two key areas around processing and tech. To Councillor McLaughlin's point on accessibility as a KPI, I think that's a really valid point. It's perhaps one that we have overlooked. Inclusive travel is an absolute priority to us, and we will get that in and understand the need for consistency with the KPIs, but that is one that we will certainly put in there in early course and get that monitored in our inclusive travel ambitions. Thank you. Councillor Faith, sorry, I've got some notes and I can't read my about the
Just about the last bus with hiring a taxi. But can I also ask a supplementary on that? If somebody turns up for the last bus, if somebody turns up for the last bus, perhaps a young woman, and she's only got the bus fare in her pocket, how can she afford to hire a taxi? What do we do about that, or is there a way around that?
Yeah, in terms of the data, we don't have that data available, but realise the importance of getting that, and that's something that we can certainly get into the system. My understanding from the chat is that it's the last bus where this taxi offer is made, and I think to Councillor Edwards' point, this compensation scheme where people are not able to get to work, whether it's the last bus or not, is something that through all the financial challenges that presents, is something that we need to look at and explore as an entirety. So I'll pick that point up in conjunction with that and task colleagues with looking at that, see if we can develop that idea. Councillor Patient, absolutely take on board the challenges around the 400 metre point, and the geography of the region is very different. Some areas more hilly than others, and something that we will look at as we move forward, particularly as we look to improve customer confidence moving towards our franchising network. So thank you for that point. It is noted and we are aware of it. Thank you.
So Councillor Carl, just want to come in there.
Yeah, it was very briefly. I was just going to really add a bit of clarity really on Councillor Buckley's question earlier, because we had the ghost bus issue a couple of meetings back, and what that group found at the time is by far and away the biggest issue and reason for the ghost bus is the operators not cancelling a service at the point at which they know that service isn't going to run, and that's the biggest discrepancy in the data that we found. So it relies on somebody in a depot saying that service isn't going to run, correcting that onto the system so it can go up on the screen, and unfortunately that's the gap, and that's the real a real annoyance for people waiting at a bus stop, is the fact that 15 minutes ago somebody knew that bus wasn't going to be there, and you could have made different plans, you could have at least known. Now, too many buses are cancelled for a start, and that's an issue, but at least if a bus is cancelled, it should be that the operators have let you know as soon as they have made that decision, because somebody has made that decision in most cases, and therefore you're aware of that and can make your plans, and that's the bit I think we really want to focus on.
So there's a bit of a systems issue there needs addressing. Councillor Williamson, I anticipated you wanted to speak before you did.
Cheers, Chair. Just a follow-up on this issue of ghost buses. When I used to work as a bus driver, we operators were able to track their buses in real time from the depot or wherever it is they were based. So are we saying if you're a passenger and you're using an operator's app or something like that, which is supposed to tell you where the buses are, or if we're going off sort of the buses in bus stations and things like that, the board, sorry, are we not going off their system? They have to track their own buses, or do they then have to transfer that to another system? I just want to understand the specifics, because if they're tracking their own buses in real time, that should then be able to relay onto passengers, surely, shouldn't it?
I'm going to let Councillor Carl come back on that. It's been into it some depth.
Yeah, we're using the same information that comes from the bus, it comes to us, but when a service is cancelled, obviously the default would be that your bus is sat waiting in Pudsey bus station, let's say, and you would see the tracking information for that, but somebody needs to literally cancel that service, otherwise it will just be shown as still sending the tracking information. So the tracking information is coming through, it's just that the bus isn't moving and everyone knows that bus isn't going to move because there's no driver there or similar.
Sorry, Chair. So what happens in situations where, if you're looking at the app or whatever board, app in particular, and the service is moving on the app but it's not physically moving, surely they wouldn't account if they were going off the real-time information, surely?
So as I understand it, the system drives itself with the timetable first of all, and it only adjusts once it sees that the service is registering itself as running behind the timetable. The problem with that is if the bus isn't out there, then it isn't suggesting that it's not, and that's the fundamental problem in the system at the moment that we want to put right.
So we did go into ghost buses in some depth a couple of meetings ago, but Councillor Bolt, I don't think you were there, so I'm going to let you ask a very short question, if that's okay.
Yeah, just want to know what the process or policy is from this authority in overseeing and commenting on development, either planning applications or major highway scheme. We talk a lot about real-time information. I was using the buses the other week coming back from Huddersfield, and I think it's 7.5 million being invested in the Leeds Road scheme, new bus shelters, but no RTI on them. And the charter talks about a place to wait for a bus with shelter at many stops. The major industrial development on the A62 at Murfield has got bus stops, but no shelter. So when you stood on Murfield Moor and it's raining, yeah, you're not very inclined to catch one. And none of those stops have actually got bus timetables and have reported them, and they're still not fitted. So what's the policy on making sure that we have suitable shelters and also putting RTI on in new shelters?
So I think there is a programme of rolling that out. So I've seen a list of, and some of them were in Kirklees actually, so I'm not sure if those are pending.
Yeah, we do have a list of rollout of RTIs that are linked to projects. I think also in terms of project development, we make sure that there's sufficient liaison between the various teams internally when there is a bus priority scheme or a highway scheme where bus shelters are involved, that we're getting the right kit in place. I'd need to, if you could give me some specifics on those points, I'd be happy to pick them up and try to work out what hasn't quite worked in the right way there.
Maybe we'll be scheduled in. So anything very briefly, Councillor McLaughlin, is that I've still got quite a lot on the agenda to get through.
Yes, thank you. It's a similar but different point. On the KPI 7, the percentage of bus journeys cancelled, it says that the way it's actually calculated is by mileage not covered, which only approximates the journeys cancelled. And I did ask this in the pre-meeting, but that seems to me, it seems odd that we don't actually have the information of how many buses have been actually cancelled, how many services have been cancelled. I understand there's a reason for that, but I think it would be important to have both sets of information, because even if it's only a short journey that's been cancelled, that could still be a community that's left high and dry quite a lot of the time, even though it's not far away from the centre. Could you sort of explain if we have access to that information, because we're going to need it if we're going to franchise these services?
Yeah, it's a really good question. It is information that we ask for and don't necessarily get, and it's something that we're acutely aware of, that mileage in itself doesn't tell you everything that you need to know for that very reason. We are having the discussions with operators about how we can make this data richer for services cancelled rather than getting the overall mileage picture, which is hopefully something we'll be able to update you on soon. Yeah.
Chair, I should stress that that will be a condition of any franchising contract. So that difference between requesting information and not receiving it will be taken away as part of the rollout of franchise contracts.
Lovely, thank you very much, everybody. Something that obviously we're all very keen to develop and keen to hold operators to account on. So just to re-emphasise, really, if we want to add things to that, for it to be add and not subtract things, because I do think that consistent data over time is something we need to be able to track performance. There are some recommendations in the report about next steps, and for us to adopt the 24-25 passenger charter, notwithstanding the additions that we've talked about today. With that, are we happy to accept those recommendations? I'm happy to support them. Councillor Carl-Firth, yeah. All those in favour, please show yes. Thank you very much. That is carried. Moving on now then to the Transport Policy Update paper. And Simon, did you want to speak to that?
Thank you, Councillor Hinchcliffe. There's a number of items in this paper covering quite a wide agenda, so I'll just drop through each of them fairly quickly, and then if there's questions, we'll pick them up at the end, if that's okay. So first of all, from a rail policy side, the Midlands Yorkshire North East study, which has been set up following Network North last October. We are working, just to say in this, we are working with Network Rail to just review the scope of the study. The study is looking at Midlands, Yorkshire and North East kind of rail connectivity, but we had some concerns over that study because it was focusing only on one element, which was the infrastructure element, rather than the wider requirements. Also related to Network North, included in that, there was a £2 billion allocation for a new station in the centre of Bradford and a new rail link connecting Bradford and Huddersfield. This was just to update on the fact that DFT has started the work on the strategic outline business case, and we are working closely with DFT and Bradford Council to consider the options in how to integrate this new station to the wider public transport offer. And how this sits alongside the work DFT are doing on their business case. Also within rail policy, a consultation on rail reform was issued earlier this year, to which we responded to on that, and it was essentially a call for evidence on the draft rail reform bid. I think our key kind of bits of feedback on that were essentially we need to understand better how the governance will work, and particularly how Great British Rail will work with the CA and Transport for the North sits together. Moving on to active travel, this is just really to bring to Transport Committee the funding announcements that were made directly before our pre-election period. We did do some comms on it at the time, but obviously it hasn't come to this committee. The active travel fund, Fund 4 and the Fund 4 extension was announced. This was additional £3 million worth of capital and £2.5 million worth of capability funding. The schemes included in the capital funding were essentially those that got unfunded first time round in the earlier asked for schemes for the funding. Also, just to note in there, we are currently working on an active travel strategy, which will come forward as part of our local transport plan, and we will be having conversations with Transport Committee around the scope and the shape of that in due course. Moving on to kind of roads and highway policy, so this is picking up on a number of consultations that Department for Transport issued earlier this year following the plan for drivers. So in March this year, government made a number of announcements relating to that policy background. The first one of which, or one of them, which was around traffic signals funding. So this is an additional 508,000 to be given to us, to the districts, to upgrade traffic signals across the region. That funding has been will be given to the districts according to the way we've done the rest of the CRSTS maintenance programme. Also within the Network North announcement, this is just a small, so major road network, £1 billion in Network North was announced to do potential new programme of major roads, kind of upgrades or additions to the major road network. This is just to say that guidance hasn't been released by DFT, and we are still working with Transport for the North to agree what a submission to that may look like, albeit obviously again going into a general election period this is likely to change. Also in here we're just noting the publication of our Vision Zero strategy. So this is a strategy that we have been working on alongside our district partners who and other kind of organisations such as West Yorkshire Police, West Yorkshire Fire Service, to set out kind of our position on a Vision Zero strategy for West Yorkshire. This was consulted on last year, and as a result of that public consultation was due to be launched in July this year, but obviously with the general election we're just working through the exact timings of where that sits now. And I think that was everything in that transport policy update.
Lovely. It's obviously quite a lot going on there, and obviously we've just come out of 3 days at UK Reef, which is the National Property Development Conference based here in Leeds. And it was great to be able to talk about all the new rail investment. There's got £5 billion worth of investment for rail and mass transit, etc. Really exciting times for the region. Obviously we need to progress things as quickly as possible. And obviously the Vision Zero stuff, I would say, surely that can continue regardless of general election timetables. It's obviously people's lives, isn't it? I thought that was something that was agreed across party. Councillor Patient.
Thank you. Yeah, and just a small point. Really good that the combined authority is developing an active travel sort of piece of work on that. I think that's really going to be warmly welcomed. I guess just to say, and I'm sure this is something you're doing anyway, Active Travel England running an event in Todmorden, Active Travel Ambition event, and I think probably good to say that clearly what can be done in places like Bradford and Leeds, and in terms of changes to roads, doesn't necessarily track to places like Wakefield and Calderdale, where it's a little bit different. So just making sure that we're also not just taking that strategic view, but also doing a bit of a drill and a deep dive into how other places can sort of access that kind of work.
Lovely, thank you. Any more questions, comments? Councillor Bolt, Councillor McLaughlin.
Thanks, Chair. On the active travel strategy, is it part of the strategy for West Yorkshire to have an active travel commissioner? I noticed Oliver Coppard has already poached one who would have been a good contender, Ed Clancy, who's gone to work in South Yorkshire, which is a bit strange because he lives in Home Firth. And it seems that we're lagging behind many of our neighbours who've had the strength of a good active travel commissioner, and filtering that down to district levels, making sure that we have district leads on active travel. One of the other things on active travel, I wonder what the authority and its partners are doing to protect active travel networks from issues. I understand that e-law has got a bridle way on one side and it's got a cycle path on the other, but it seems to be having numerous incursions from illegal traveller encampments. It's a wonderful track, but is rendered out of action for many times for cyclists and horse riders because of illegal encampments. So what are we doing to protect active travel routes when we build them?
That sounds like a specific issue, that local issue there about encampments. I would suggest. I'm not sure that's a universal issue that we've got. Just regarding the champion work, obviously we're meant to be very good at this, actually, active travel, aren't we, in West Yorkshire? Didn't we get a gold star or something from Active Travel England for being very good at it? I forgot what the system was.
So we are one of only, Helen will correct me if I've got the wrong level 3 areas in the country, and through that level of performance, we do have a very, very strong relationship both with Active Travel England and also the chair of Active Travel England, Chris Boardman. So as far as I'm aware at this stage, I don't think the mayor sees the need for any further appointments.
I've had lots of active dialogue with Active Travel England myself in the last few months as well, actually, making sure they realise how important all parts of the region are, and I think we can all play a role in championing Councillor Bolt, and I'm sure none of us are shy at coming forward, are we really? Any other questions I missed there? Sorry, Councillor McLaughlin.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, thank you for the report and for all the work that's going on. It's incredibly impressive. The report does make passing reference to HS2 RIP and the fallout thereof. Something we discussed at the last Transport Committee meeting was the now uncertain future of the T-shaped station at Leeds, which was supposed to be a really crucial part of the improvements we wanted to see to our local rail network. So I'm just wondering if there's any update on that, or is the government still keeping us in limbo?
I would suggest probably now's not the right time to ask if they're all being dissolved, haven't they, by next Thursday, but obviously it is very important for the whole region that station is the right way around.
It is absolutely, and we continue to anticipate that the resolution of the issue will come out of a a study which has recently started, which is led by the DFT, called the Midlands, York and North East Rail Study. I think it's referred to in the board. In the paper, I'm on the steering board for that study, so I'm certainly looking to ensure that that's the way in which we're able to resolve the positioning of Leeds Station on a future national network.
Lovely, thank you. I'm not seeing any more questions on this item. Oh, sorry, Councillor Williamson.
Cheers, Chair. Just to pick up on the point Simon's just made about the MYNE study, I just what concerns have we raised as a authority basically on that study?
So the the fundamental issue that we want to resolve, and working really closely with neighbouring areas around us, including some very close working with South Yorkshire, recognising the importance of the relationship between the two city regions, is that we want to ensure that through the study we have enhanced connectivity from the base that there is at present. So, for example, there is no intention on our part to see any trade-off in terms of Wakefield connectivity. But fundamentally, where we're looking to take the piece of work in the first instance is to reach a very, very clear consensus with government around what the long-term economic growth horizons are, from which we are then planning back the right railway, as opposed to planning railway interventions and then asking ourselves what's the economic impact of that. I think that's landed now with colleagues in the department. Clearly, it's likely to be a little longer before the work starts to gain full traction with the announcements of the past few days.
Thank you very much. I'm not seeing any foreign indications on this report, so I think we're probably happy to note it. And moving on then to the next item, which is the local transport plan update, something that we've done in workshops before as a committee, so everyone should be familiar with this work.
Thank you, Councillor Hinchcliffe. So this report was originally put into this pack of papers to just kind of update the committee on the phase 1 engagement, which was due to start on the 20th of June. We now obviously can't start on the 20th of June due to the general election. So obviously this report is here as it stands, but really it was just to say that we were due to start an 8-week engagement on the 20th of June, which would look to do 2 panel events in each district, have a number of online webinars, and kind of a lot of kind of face-to-face discussion getting out into the far reaches of the region. We are now re-looking at that programme for engagement in terms of the timings to start at some point in the summer after the general election. So the paper was just really for noting on that basis.
Thank you. I mean, can we not just get on with this? Because obviously we were discussing earlier that actually these are questions, and obviously the conclusion of it won't come back until after the general election is over. Obviously, we as local councillors obviously very keen to get on improving with our areas, and having just come out of a pre-election period and election period, we're keen to get on and see positive developments.
Definitely, and I think our advice, and as members will understand, as taking place in individual local authorities, we are just currently working through the details of the implication of the Prime Minister's announcement earlier in the week. But we are only talking a few weeks. We will be back up and running as soon as we are through a general election.
Okay, fine, thank you. Any other questions? No. Oh no, sorry, Councillor Patient. Apologies.
Thank you. Yeah, just briefly, and just to say, I do hope that members do engage in that process when you come to our different spaces. I think there's probably a real opportunity to make sure that we've got a step change in road space reallocation and think about reducing car dominance, you know, in all of our places. Think about taking up of active modes and all the stuff we've spoken about in terms of public transport today. I think if we miss it and we fail to get those sort of strategic principles in place, then we could really miss a trick on this. And it feels like, you know, just mentioned the active travel consultation and stuff, it feels like there's a bit of a point in time to make all those things work really well. But then I would say with that, wouldn't I, Chair?
No, absolutely. And I think it's an ongoing discussion, isn't it? That given we're getting mass transit, trams, increasing number of people cycling, walking, then road space is really, you know, it's in demand, isn't it? And we have to have a mature conversation about, you know, how we use that most productively. Any more questions, comments on this? No, well, let's just get on with it as quickly as possible. Thank you very much. Moving on now to the next item, item 11, which, just to remind members, has got the confidential appendix to it. If you wish to refer to anything in that appendix, can you please just raise your hand now? No, in that case, I won't chuck people out of the room. But please, if you feel yourself minded to do so, can you pause and let me know? Thank you very much. So are we... Helen.
Thank you, Councillor Hinchcliffe. This is really kind to ask the committee for approval to go to statutory consultation around the local electric vehicle infrastructure programme and statutory consultation around the electric vehicle strategy. So what we're trying to do here is bring this, I guess, setting a bit of context here around kind of the role of both of these strategies. So basically government published last year on March 22 the UK electric vehicle infrastructure strategy, of which on the back of that we were successful with local electric vehicle infrastructure funding. As part of that process, we are required to undertake a statutory consultation on a kind of a programme for delivery of that process to enable us then to deliver the funding. As part of that, we want to situate that within an electric vehicle strategy, which in turn will be situated in kind of an umbrella of an alternative fuels kind of strategy to kind of deliver our decarbonisation objectives. So what we're asking committee here, just to be clear, is to kind of go to statutory consultation on the local electric vehicle infrastructure plan and engagement around our electric vehicle strategy, not the broader umbrella. Okay. I guess just a little bit of kind of detail around some of that. The strategy has been developed in collaboration with our district partners along with the programme as well, and it really kind of has an aim to kind of develop a bit more of a network of EV charge points to support some of the barriers to overcoming delivery of electric vehicles across the region. So it's been a very much a data and kind of evidence-led approach to doing both pieces of work to kind of come up with a delivery model that we're hoping will help accelerate their delivery across the region, but also within the realms of our current funding, but what's our future vision beyond that point. So if we could have approval to go out to that consultation. The timings of that consultation were due to be around early July, but we hadn't fully fixed the date yet. So the general election we don't think will impact upon the delivery of that.
Excellent, thank you very much. Keen to obviously get on with things. Yes. So we've been asked in this to recommend the approval to a 8-week public and stakeholder consultation exercise. Councillor Bolt, before we go to vote on that.
Yeah, thanks, Jane. Just reflecting on what Councillor Patient has said and others about active travel. Is there anything in the authority's strategy or consultation to reflect the growth in e-bikes, particularly in some of our districts which are topographically more challenging than others? So you can have a situation where somebody wants to cycle to work or out for tourism, and they're limited, obviously, on recharging the bike, and it's something that we should be. It shouldn't just be a motor vehicle biased electric charging policy. We should be looking at all modes.
Good question, Councillor Bolt, Councillor McLaughlin, and Councillor Firth.
It's easy to confuse us. It's all right. Yeah, just a suggestion. 2.19 about the consultation. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of interest in this within this room, but I would suggest within all of the councils within the authority. I know for quite a lot of us as elected members, residents ask us about this, both from the parking point of view and also in terms of being able to charge electric vehicles of different types. I think the point about bikes is a very good one. So can I ask that when it comes to this consultation that this reaches all elected members across West Yorkshire, and not only those of us who are here, but also other councillors, because this is something that comes up quite a lot for many of us.
Thank you, Councillor Firth.
I will be brief. While I welcome this paper and this potential investment, there's a big fear in the back of my mind that we may be investing lots and lots of money, not just locally but nationally, in what could shortly become obsolete technology, with the massive investment worldwide in hydrogen and the new innovations taking place, I'm thinking that not so long, or maybe a few years' time, maybe this will be obsolete, like cable TV.
Controversial, Councillor Firth, but I'm also an advocate for hydrogen, but I think there's probably a place for both, isn't there, really, going forward? Councillor McLaughlin now does want to speak.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it seems how you've asked me. I'll say something. Something I just wanted to say is I thank you for putting this together. It's a very impressive document, and we've obviously talked about it a lot before, and it's come to committee, and we've made recommendations, and I can see the improvements that have been made based on things that we've raised as a committee. So I just want to say thank you for listening, and it's greatly appreciated as all the work you're doing.
Thank you, and I'll pass that back to the team. Thank you.
That's very positive. Thank you, Councillor McLaughlin. We have been asked to approve this. Oh, sorry, Councillor Patient.
Just very briefly, and just to try and pull all of those bits together, clearly there's a space here, isn't there, for developing mobility hubs, and I know that's something the Combined Authority are all already looking at, you know, whether it's e-bike charging, or whether it's the active travel stuff, or whether it's LEVI or whatever. I guess there's still just a little bit of, not concern, but just being mindful of the fact that it would be brilliant to deliver mobility hubs, and there would be good solutions in certain locations, but still just thinking about who's doing the back end stuff on those systems. So brilliant to deliver beautiful looking capital projects, but just making sure they've got longevity built in.
When it comes to the big capital projects we're doing, they should all be thinking about that, shouldn't they, going forward, as you say? So that's something for planning.
Yeah.
So anything else you want to add as a result of the comments? No? Okay, fine. We're all right with that. We just want to give approval then to start the consultation exercise for as quickly as possible. I'm happy to recommend that. Can I see a seconder in Councillor Carlisle? And then all those in favour, please show. Thank you. Let's get going with it. Super. Thank you very much. Which leads us now then on to the project approvals, one of which you've already done, which actually we probably should have done the other as well. First one is Leeds City Bus Station roof. Dave.
Yes, I'll be picking this one up here. I'll provide a brief overview of where we're up to with the Leeds City Bus Station with the refurb and the roof here. So there was a £6.1 million Leeds Bus Station Phase 1 project for refurbishment, which was completed in September 2022. This included remedial and repair work to the roof, but however a full roof replacement was not possible at the time due to the complexities of the roof structure as well as funding constraints at the point in time. Over the period since September 22, I think it's been clear to everyone that the remedial works have not proven to be successful to ensure that the building is sufficiently waterproof as we go in a passenger environment, which I find less than satisfactory at present. Unacceptable levels of water ingress. So this scheme has been brought forward to look at a potential overall replacement of the 2,200 metre squared roof, which is not just the glass that needs replacing, it's the substructure and associated services that all come with that as well. And the report is seeking to progress the scheme through to starting to develop work commencing on the outline business case. £375,000 of funding has been sought. The works in the design development itself are likely to take a further 12 months due to the complexity before construction can commence. However, in parallel with this, a further remedial scheme is seeking to be implemented to halt further water ingress during the intervening period as soon as it is practicable to do so. So we're looking to recommend funding approval here of £375,000 development costs as stated in the report.
Okay, so this is the first stage of funding request by the sounds of it.
Yes.
And this has been going on for some time, you say? This has been a few years in development, I understand. So, any questions? We've got Councillor Williamson and Councillor Khan.
Cheers, Chair. I'm happy to support this project, but I would just like, going forward, if we've got similar problems with the roof in Wakefield Bus Station, I know it's owned and operated by Arriva, but as we go through franchising, that's probably going to likely to come over to Combined Authority, and the issues we've got in Wakefield are very similar to this one, and the objectives, there's a lot of crossover anyway and everything, so I'm just mindful if we could maybe look at doing that, because if we wait until we've taken the bus station over, it might be more costly and give us more disruptions in the long run. Thank you.
Councillor Carr?
Yeah, sorry.
Councillor Carr?
Councillor Willis has raised my point, so thank you.
Thank you. So obviously Wakefield.
Apologies for jumping too quick there. Yeah, that's absolutely on our radar, Councillor, around the issues around Wakefield bus station. As you say, it's owned by Arriva, and we'll be looking at asset condition surveys across all our stock over the coming year to understand that, and indeed through discussions we'll be having going forward around when we do need to take on any particular, potentially take on any particular facilities such as Wakefield bus station. That'll be something we need to be doing.
Any more questions, comments? No. Are we happy to approve this project approval? I'm happy to recommend that. Second by Councillor Carlow. All those in favour, please show. That is carried. Thank you very much. Moving on to the next item, which is TCF Dewsbury Town Centre walking and cycling improvements. Vicky. Umbrella.
Yeah, thanks. That's myself. So yes, this is Dewsbury Town Centre walking and cycling. It's a project within Transforming Cities Fund programme. So the project is being led and delivered by Kirklees Council, and it will deliver a series of walking, cycling and public realm improvements in the town, with the aim of making it safer and more attractive to travel around by walking and cycling. There's a number of interventions, and these are all set out in the report. So mainly inside the Ring Road area, and improving connectivity with the bus station and with the rail station. There's been 2 rounds of public consultation undertaken and extensive engagement with stakeholders in the town. An equality impact assessment has been undertaken, so all of these have been considered in the design of the scheme. It is now at outline business case stage, so the total project costs have been forecast at just over 12.2 million. So that's made up of 10.25 million from the combined authority and 2 million funding from Kirklees Council. The development funding ask of 454,000 to progress the detailed designs of the scheme, that's been granted by the Executive Director for Transport through a delegation, so that's noted within the papers. So for this item there's no ask for release of development funding from the committee today. The recommendation is to approve the outline business case and to give indicative approval for the combined authority funding of the 10.25 million for the delivery of the scheme when it gets to that stage, as set out in the outline business case stage.
Thank you. Questions? Councillor Bolt?
Thanks, Chair. I suppose it's a chicken and egg question. It's okay improving cycling and walking in Dewsbury Town Centre, but how do people get there safely with cycling and walking? Because the infrastructure from like the Calder Valley Greenway, the Ossett Greenway doesn't actually permeate right into the town centre. The Dewsbury Wakefield Greenway finishes at Sands Lane, and there's no signposting then linking that through to any other active travel corridor. The Calder Valley Greenway, the Spen Valley Greenway, is currently going to be closed for some time, thanks to our friends in TRU. And when TRU close things, they don't put in place any mitigation or any suitable diversion. And obviously the challenges of getting into Dewsbury Town Centre from places like Heckman, Dwight, Staincliffe and other. So the town centre will be great for walking and cycling if you can get there.
Councillor Firth.
Thank you, Chair. I know what Councillor Bolter said. Some of it's true, and maybe we do want better signposting. But this will enhance Dewsbury Town Centre and will become part of the Dewsbury blueprint, as I see it. There's lots of innovation, lots of plans for Dewsbury Town Centre, and this is only part of it. And it will go a long way to complete the picture. And it's not going to happen tomorrow. All these schemes are actually progressing at pace now, by the way, but it still at pace means several years. But when it all comes together, it will enhance the town, and it's a fantastic scheme, and I applaud it. Thank you.
Thank you. So regeneration doesn't happen overnight, does it? We're all aware of that, but as councillors we're very keen to push things forward as quickly as possible. Any other questions, comments about this particular proposal? No. Councillor Firth, are you happy to propose that then?
Delighted to propose.
I'm happy to second that. Can I see all those in favour please show? And that is carried. Thank you very much. Moving on then to the TCS South Bradford Park and Ride Expressway. Simon Lilly.
Afternoon all. So the Transforming Cities Fund South Bradford Park and Ride and Expressway scheme led by Bradford Council will better connect communities and improve sustainable travel options to the south of the city. The scheme will deliver a new park and ride facility in South Bradford plus targeted bus priority measures at key junctions along Manchester Road and an active travel cycle route to the city centre from the park and ride site. A phased delivery programme has been developed as part of the outline business case, as the full scheme is not affordable within the Transforming Cities Fund's programme budget. Phase 1 of the scheme covering bus priority measures will be delivered through the Transforming Cities Fund and will include 2 new bus lanes along Manchester Road, extended bus lanes to get buses to the front of general traffic at Mayo Junction and at St Stephen's Road. There'll also be improved signage and 4 improved bus stops. And towards the city centre, there'll be 1 new pedestrian and cycle crossing at the junction of Senior Way and Cross Street Junction. Phase 2, which will cover the park and ride site and the active travel route, is subject to alternative funding being identified. During the appraisal, the value for money assessment for Phase 1 and Phase 2 calculated a benefit cost ratio of 1.63. This represents medium value for money. Overall, the scheme is aiming to reduce the number of vehicles travelling along the A641, which is the Manchester Road, into Bradford City Centre by 25% by 2036. Improve bus journeys along the A641 corridor by 25% again by 2027. Also, increase the number of people who are able to access Bradford City Centre using sustainable modes within 30 minutes by 25% again by 2027. In terms of funding, Phase 1 of the South Bradford scheme, which is obviously covering the targeted bus priority measures, comes forward with a total cost of £12,092,689. Delivery of Phase 1 is scheduled to be fully completed by August 2026. So at committee today, we're asking for the following approvals. So the South Bradford Park and Ride Expressway proceeds through to decision point 3, which is outline business case, and work commences on activity 4 for phase 1, which is the full business case. Additional development costs of £1,569,000 are approved to progress phase 1 to activity 4, obviously full business case. And the Combined Authority enters into an addendum to the existing funding agreement with Bradford Council for expenditure up to £6,080,774.
Thank you very much. Councillor Rothschild, is your turn.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Obviously, it's a good scheme. I'm pleased to see it coming forward. Splitting it out means we can deliver phase 1, which was the bit that I think the consultation showed the public were most keen to see as well. So really pleased to be delivering those improvements which will kind of reflect some of the other sustainable transport corridors we want to be doing around the key arterials of the city centre and across the district. And then obviously, as and when we can identify further funding, we can pick up the work that's being done for phase 2. So it's certainly not wasted work. It's just work that takes us up to this decision point, and then we can pick it back up again in the future through the assurance process. So it's quite robust in that regard. So pleased it's coming forward, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Bolt.
Yeah, thanks. I was interested in the metrics there. I think it's 2027, one of the targets for increasing the number of journeys by sustainable transport, which is a short time scale when there are no active travel measures at the moment. The Manchester Road corridor is one of the key corridors for people from Kirklees getting in and out of Bradford, either for commuting or going through Bradford to the Dales and things. And having used it on a number of occasions, it's not one I look forward to. So, when are we going to see some safer cycling routes in and out of Bradford for Kirklees residents?
You're always very welcome as well, Councillor Bolt. Simon.
Yeah, I guess in terms of that, we're just waiting for that to identify the further funding in terms of that active travel route. I think picking up on that point in terms of the outputs, depending when that funding comes forward, that output may need to be revised to reflect that.
Thank you very much for raising that. Any other questions, comments? No. Councillor Rushaw, are you happy with to propose this? Thank you. I'm happy to second it. Can I see all those in favour please show? Thank you, that is carried. So we've done D, we're now on to E, which is a bus network plan and superbus. Rachel.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'll just put my glasses on, apologies. So the basic bus network and superbus scheme is intended to expand the core network of bus services across West Yorkshire. This will include more frequent services, potentially more bus routes or longer service hours. The funding for the bus network plan and superbus comes from our bus services improvement plan, which is funded by the Department for Transport. Just over 29 million from our BSIP has been allocated to the bus network plan and superbus delivery, and to date a little over 11 million pounds has been approved, which was for development costs, delivery of tranche 1 schemes, which are now up and running from February, and for superbus schemes as well. This leaves around £18 million yet to be approved. This report is seeking the release of an additional £3 million for the delivery of another tranche of enhancements on existing bus routes. And then there's work ongoing to determine how the remaining just under £15 million is going to be spent, and there'll be further approvals coming forward in future around that. In terms of the scheme itself, 4.148 and 4.149 of the report sets out what the scheme's intended outputs and outcomes are going to be, and of course as set out it's around increasing bus patronage, increasing accessibility to the bus network across West Yorkshire. In terms of equality and diversity, there's obviously been an equality impact assessment done for the scheme, and in 4.155 it sets out that there's a positive impact from delivery of the scheme on a number of groups with protected characteristics, which is useful and is important to note. So moving on then to the recommendation as set out in 4.169. The Transport Committee approves that the bus network enhancement tranches 1, 1.5 and superbus schemes proceed through decision point 4, which is full business case, and work continues and commences on delivery, which is activity 5. As I said, approval is given to the additional combined authority cost of £3 million for delivery of tranche 1.5, taking the total approval to just over 14 million. And as I say, to confirm that the total that's been allocated to the network plan and superbus from our BSIP funding is just over 29 million. Then the combined authority provides funding to bus operators for tranche 1, 1.5 and superbus using existing compensation arrangements that we have in place. The amount of funding allocated to each bus operator for bus services is delegated to the Executive Director of Transport. And then finally, that future approvals of the BSIP bus network plan and superbus scheme are made in accordance with the assurance pathway, approval route and tolerances outlined in this report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. And obviously, as well as fares, we need a comprehensive network, and it's been great to be able to put additional bus services in, which are, I've said earlier in the meeting, providing real benefit to residents here, obviously in Keighley, but of course around the districts and around the region. Councillor Carlow.
I was just going to add a quick note, Chair, thanks to note that cost ratios in these, and I guess how odd they always seem to be, because the funding we did for the, if I take the Airedale, the airline route through Bradford to Leeds as an example, patronage on that has increased by up to 30%, I think, from the funding we had. But obviously this scheme, when you plug it into the DfT's normal calculator, comes out as low value for money. Increasing the amount of passengers on a bus route by 30% doesn't seem to me to be low value for money. So I think it's just odd how what we see in real life bears no relation necessarily to the DfT calculations as to how successful it's going to be on the ground, and how I guess we have to take them with a bit of a pinch of salt and probably a bit more hope and optimism from ourselves on what policy could happen on the ground.
Shows the value of devolution, doesn't it? Because obviously local people, local representatives have a better understanding of how the region works than anybody in Westminster would. I think that's probably something we could all agree on in this meeting. So great to see these new proposals on back of considerable success. As you say, 30% increase is fantastic, really, for that airline route. And I'm happy to propose this. Councillor Carl will second it. Can I see all those in favour, please show. That is carried. Thank you very much. Lovely. So that completes the project approvals. Date of the next meeting, we're going to confirm those at the Combined Authority meeting, I believe, in 20th of June. I would like those to be varied days throughout the week, just to enable most people to be able to attend those. And can I thank those members who are retiring from this committee and for all your hard work, and look forward to seeing new members at the next one. Thank you very much, everybody. Bye-bye.